Hi, everyone. We're just going to take a few minutes here to let people get logged on, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. If you're just joining us, we're just waiting a few moments to let everyone get logged on. So we will be starting here shortly. Again, if you're just joining us, we're just waiting for people to log on. We'll wait for another minute or so before we get started with today's workshop. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Financial Empowerment Academy. I just want to make sure my video is working. My name is Suzi Day, and I'm Director of Development and Survivor Empowerment Programs here at Free to Thrive. We are super excited about our workshop 2 today in partnership with the San Diego Women's Business Center, in addition to Self-Help Credit Union. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. Please note that all participants are muted so we cannot see you. Make sure you have selected speaker view in the top right corner of your Zoom window. If you have any technical issues, you can reach out to our training coordinator, Elaine, and she will be more than happy to help you. Her information is there on the screen. During the presentation, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We actually will be waiting till the end of the workshop to answer your questions, but if you have them as we are going along, of course, feel free to put those into the Q&A. And we also have the chat feature at the bottom, so anything else you would like to talk about or have addressed, you can put in the chat window. We will answer, again, we will answer all of your questions toward the end of the presentation. Well, the big bonus, if you are joining us live today, and by live, I mean watching and participating in the workshop right now. Unfortunately, if you are watching a recording at a later date and time of this, you will not be eligible, but we have an incredible opportunity drawing today for 4 lucky people. Winners will be notified by email. When you logged on today for the workshop, you are given a random number in our system. So I will be selecting 4 numbers, and winners will be notified via email later today. We will be giving away 1 gas card, 1 Target gift card, 1 Walmart card, and 1 lucky winner will receive an iPad. And of course, when we reach out to you, we will get information to ensure that we can get those items to you. Now, as a few more people are coming on, and before we really get started, at Free to Thrive, before all of our meetings, before we start trainings or workshops like this, we like to just take a moment to breathe. We're all so busy, and it's nice just to take a moment to kind of calm ourselves and help us be more present in the hour ahead. So if you are comfortable, just take a moment to close your eyes or lower your gaze, and with me, take a deep inhale through your nose, and then a slow, even greater exhale. And with that, we are ready to begin. Right now, while we're all here today, what we're excited about is our workshop and our Financial Empowerment Academy. The Academy is part of Free to Thrive Survivor Empowerment Programs and is a first of its kind to help participants through workshops like this and mentoring have the skills, tools, and most importantly, I believe, the support to help you become financially empowered and independent. This free program is designed for trafficking survivors and their families, but we also encourage service providers to participate to hopefully share this information with your clients, and more importantly, encourage them to participate in a workshop or in all the workshops. So for those service providers that are here with us today, I thank you for joining us. Our first workshop actually launched in February, and it was a huge success. We are excited that we can now move forward with all of our workshops online. And of course, the silver lining to that is now we can provide this information to people across the country. And I'm excited to share with you that today we have participants from 7 different states. We are very honored to have 2 amazing guest speakers today. Callie Ingebrigtsen, who is the business advisor for the San Diego Women's Business Center of San Diego and Imperial Counties, and Adriana Enlow, the branch manager for Self-Help Credit Union. The first half of the workshop, Callie will focus on all things credit. She's an incredible credit guru, so she will be providing advice, tips, resources for you to really help with your personal credit. And also, if you happen to be someone who wants to start their own business, this is also extremely valuable information. Adriana and Self-Help Credit Union have been a fantastic partner in helping us actually create the Academy and also launch our first workshop, which was called Bite of Reality. And it really was more of like a high-level overview of what budgeting looks like. But today, Adriana will dive a little deeper, and she will be offering tips, advice, support, resources to help you with your personal budgeting. And again, all of this information really important if you are someone who possibly wants to start their own business. So with that, I am honored to introduce Callie Ingebrigtsen. Thank you, Callie.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we can get started. Okay, so again, my name is Callie Ingebrigtsen. Thank you for that intro. I am one of the business advisors with the Women's Business Center for San Diego and Imperial County, and I'm excited to share this information with you. At the Women's Business Center, we offer a variety of services geared at people who are considering starting a business or who are definitely interested in starting a business. So just so you know a little bit about what we offer one-on-one business advising. We have a variety of workshops about different topics. We can help you prepare to apply for business loans. We can help your business with marketing, social media, get your website up and running, and create a business plan. A little bit about me. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. As I mentioned, am a business advisor with the Women's Business Center, and I also have my own small business as a financial coach. I have been in the money world for 11 years, and perhaps most importantly, I'm a die-hard Shakira fan. I love her so much. So I just wanted to throw that in to inspire you to look her up after the webinar. All right, so today, what are we going to be going over? We're going to cover what is credit, why is credit important, what are credit reports, and a little bit about how they work. We'll dive then into credit scores, and then tips to improve your credit, and we'll end with some resources. I wanted to start with an important note, however, to remind you, first of all, that you are not your money, you are not your debt if you have debt, you are not your credit report, and you are not your credit score even. You are amazing, and nothing can change that ever. Money, debt, and credit are just tools to help you live your life and reach your goals. Sometimes people have a lot of emotional energy around their money, and there can be a lot of misinformation or just confusion and stress and anxiety around finances that can make people feel bad about themselves. But I wanted to remind you that you are not your money. Money is separate from you, and your worth is completely intact as a human being. So regardless of where your credit is at or your debt is at, that cannot be changed. So what is credit? Credit is when a lender, which would be, for example, a bank, a credit union, a credit card company, lets you buy goods or services with the promise, of future payments. So you are able to access something earlier than you otherwise would if you had to save up all that money and buy it outright. The idea basically is you can buy now and pay later. So when you use credit, it's kind of like an IOU. You're accessing the thing that you want right now, but you do owe the money to pay it back. So it's not free money like I probably thought in high school. So why is credit important? I would love for you to chime in the chat. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a chat feature. So what are some things that credit impacts that you know? I know all of you have lots of life experience, and I'd love to hear from you about what you think. And Elaine, if you wouldn't mind chiming in. Oh, here's the chat. Okay, perfect. So you can go ahead and type. If you want, you can send it just to the panelists, or I believe you have the option to send it to everybody, but if you want the most privacy, you can just send it to us as panelists. But I would love to hear what you think, why credit matters. I'll give you a minute to pull that up in your chat. Oh, some great answers already. So credit opens many doors. That's true. It can help you with financial freedom. Someone said it shows responsibility. I love that. Oh my goodness, look at all these amazing answers. Correct. Credit scores can affect lots of different things, like applying for a business loan, potentially an apartment or housing. It affects your interest rate, someone said. That's true. It affects your ability to rent, or if you get approved for different types of housing. Oh my goodness, next time around, I'm going to invite all of you to co-lead this with me. You definitely already know a lot. That's awesome. You're on the right track. So thank you for chiming in. Correct. So here's some examples of why credit matters. It definitely affects if you apply for a mortgage. That's kind of the biggest example, I would say. Applying for a mortgage is a huge financial decision, and they're definitely going to pull your credit when you apply for a mortgage. Oftentimes when you apply for an apartment, the landlord will look at your credit report. If you apply for things like credit cards or car loans, they will pull your credit report. There's different types of insurance that your credit can impact, so it will affect if you get approved at all, and then how much your rate might be. Something also to know is in select jobs, they might pull your credit. This is definitely not all jobs, so it's not every position that you would consider applying for, but sometimes the company that you're applying for will ask your permission to pull your credit, and it's typically for managerial positions. So they would never pull it without your knowledge. You would have to sign a form giving them consent to do so, but more and more there are some employers that will do that. And then at the Women's Business Center, as I mentioned, we help people pull their or apply for business loans. And so it's important to know, if you're considering starting a business down the line, that your own credit as the business owner, when you start out, is your business's credit, because essentially they really have nothing else to go off of. So credit applies to all these different areas. So if you're considering starting a business, or just where you are right now, I think you can see it really impacts lots of areas of people's lives. So that's why I'm excited you're all here too, so you can be even more gurus than I can tell you are by everything that you shared in the chat. So let's start with credit reports. So I am going to have my comrade Elaine pull up a poll here for you all to answer this question. Have you ever checked your credit report? I'd love to know if you have checked your credit report. There's a few answers there, so go ahead and chime in. All right, so we'll see the responses here. It looks like a lot of you have looked at your credit, which is amazing, and many of you have done that in the past year, and some of you have not looked at your credit report, which is totally okay, and that's exactly why we're here. So it's just exciting to see where you all are at. So hopefully I can clear up answers for you, and hopefully make things more understandable, because in the credit world it can get a little confusing. So thank you for answering that question. So what exactly is a credit report? It is a detailed record that shows your credit activities, and we're going to dive into this in more detail. But essentially, it's a report that will show your experience with the things that are listed here. If you've ever had credit cards or different types of loans, they'll show up, and they will show your current balances if you still owe, or it will show that you don't have a balance if you don't have a balance, and then it'll show a detailed payment history. Typically, the past 2 to 3 years for every credit card or loan will be listed there. So what type of information is on your credit report? This is the majority of what is on your credit report. It'll have a section with your identifying information, and I'll show you an example of this in just a little bit. But it'll have your name, some of your past addresses, and hopefully your current address, your date of birth, and then it'll move on to the bulk of the credit report, which is what's called account info. So in the credit world, people will use the word account as like an umbrella term, basically to say all types of loans and credit cards, or other types of credit that you have had is referred to as an account. It's not like a checking. This doesn't include your checking or savings accounts, but the account is just kind of the phrase that they use. So that's the bulk of your credit report, and I'll show you an example here in a little bit. If anything has gone through what they call public records, which means if you've ever had a financial issue that has gone through the court, that will possibly show up. That would include things like a bankruptcy, a collections, or if you have a lien, that would be on there. And then at the bottom, typically there's a section that's called inquiries, which means when someone has viewed your credit report, if you've ever asked for someone to pull your credit report, there'll be a little list there at the bottom. Or if you've ever actually gotten spam in the mail, if you've ever gotten junk mail saying you're pre-approved for this credit card or this type of, I don't know, loan or some type of financial product, you can actually look on your credit report and see who has asked for a promotional inquiry. Those type of inquiries don't affect your credit report, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, you would be able to see who all has looked at your credit report, and that is called inquiries. A heads up that good information, meaning when you have made on-time payments, that typically stays in your credit report forever, and that's a good thing. Negative information is often removed in about 7 or 10 years, depending on the situation. And you can actually see the date that it is expected to pop off of your credit report. So, question for you again in the chat. who makes credit reports? Do you know who is the company that makes your credit report? I would love to see if you all know. It's another little pop quiz, and no stress if you don't know, because we're going to go over that here in just a sec, but I'm willing to bet some of you know. And again, if you want most privacy, you can just send it to us as the panelists. I'll give you a second to chime in. I'm not going to read the responses for a second in case a few of you are trying to remember. Someone said, while we're waiting here, that having credit affects your ability to get loans for a big item like mortgages, and that is true. So true. Okay. Oh my goodness, you all know. People are chiming in saying that the credit bureaus make the credit reports, and that is absolutely correct. Someone even nailed all of these 3 names because there's 3 credit bureaus. So there is TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Altogether, these big companies are called the credit bureaus. They're basically like warehouses, if you want to think of them. Well, I think of them like that, kind of like big warehouses where people's credit information lives. And then within all of the data that they have, they will gather as much as they can from us as creditors. And then they'll go to the courts, and they'll go to credit card companies and banks and credit unions and gather as much information as they can. And then they will make an individual file, which is called a credit report, for each consumer that they have information on. And then they sell that information. They kind of keep it private and only give it to people who request that information. So that is basically the role of the credit bureaus. And so again, there's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And on the whole, I would say your information is going to be similar at each one of these credit bureaus, but not always the same. And so if you actually want to think about it, you actually have 3 credit reports, not just 1. You have 3. So you have 1 with each one of these credit bureaus, and sometimes they vary just a smidge based on how things get reported to them. So some reasons as to why you should check your credit report. This is not to freak you out, but there is a statistic saying that 30% of credit reports contain errors that can even result in people being denied credit. So this includes some of the following examples. Sometimes there's things that you paid off that show an unpaid balance. And so if you paid it off, you deserve that to be reported. So that's a reason to check your credit report. Sometimes medical bills can get sent to collections before your insurance pitches in and covers it. So that could be an error, and that would show as a balance for you, even if it was paid. Sometimes someone else's information reports on your credit report. As I mentioned, these are big, huge companies that are gathering tons of info, really as much as possible. And so sometimes there can be human error. Sometimes someone mistypes something. My name is spelled, for example, C-A-L-L-Y. But what if there was another Callie with a similar name, C-A-L-L-I-E? I don't know, and her information got posted on my credit report. I wouldn't really want that because it would affect my credit. So sometimes with similar names or family members, I've seen when people have very similar names within their family, like their siblings or their parents' information can get posted on their credit report. And you just want to make sure it's 100% accurate. Sometimes when people go through bankruptcy, they have the option to have certain credits or certain debts dismissed, depending on the type of bankruptcy that they file for. And it can happen every so often that that debt still shows on their credit report. And so these are just all potential errors that could be on someone's credit report, and really want to make sure that your credit report is accurate. And unfortunately, the burden is on us as the individual to make sure that our information is accurate. So I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about how you can access your credit report. So don't you worry. So how can you view your credit report? You would want to go to this website, annualcreditreport.com. And I know it's a little bit crazy that it's a .com, but it's backed by federal law. This is the only source where you can get your free credit report for reals for free, and it's backed by the federal government. I would think it would be a .gov, but it's a .com. So annualcreditreport.com is where you want to go, and you can usually, under non-COVID situations, you can typically get your credit report once every 12 months from the credit bureaus. But the credit bureaus have agreed that now through April of 2021, during COVID, you can actually pull it weekly. So if you are planning to work on your credit and you're wanting to make a bunch of moves to pay things off and you're able to make progress and you want to make sure that things are getting updated, that's a bonus. You can make sure that things are getting cleared up and pull it again and not have to wait a whole year. So a note that is important to understand is that annual credit report does not include a score. We're going to go over scores here in a second. But annual credit report was approved through Congress. So the law that gives us as consumers the legal right, all people in the United States can pull their credit report once a year for free. Unfortunately, that legislation did not include a score. For up to me, it would, because I feel like that's our information and we should be able to have access to it. But I'm not yet in charge, you guys. I'm so sorry to say. But that's where you want to go. There's lots of other websites that you've probably heard of, like freecreditscore.com or free this and that or credit yada yada.com. If you go to those, typically they're going to ask for your credit card information and they're going to offer you credit monitoring services and other things that when you're just getting started, you might not necessarily need. So I don't want to bash other resources, but this is really the place where you can go without having to pay anything. You can get a copy of all 3 of your credit reports for free, and they're not going to sell you any extra stuff. So this is really the place where you want to go to get your credit report, okay? So let's show you some examples. And I'm sorry, I promise you I looked for as many non-fuzzy examples as I could, but I wanted to find examples that were easy to look at. So here is just an example of what kind of like the top part of your credit report would look like. Remember how I said they're going to have your basic information? So here we can see this person's name is Cheryl Consumer. It's very exciting. So we're looking at that person's pretend credit report, okay? So it has their name there. It'll have their birth date, their phone number. Sometimes they'll list your employers, and then they'll have your current address and your previous address. Now, I will say, sometimes people are like, oh my goodness, where do they get that information? Well, they're going to be, remember, this is coming from either TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian, and those guys are just scanning and gathering up as much information as they can from banks and credit unions and anywhere else that you've applied for credit. And so they only have the information that at one point you put on an application. So if you applied for a car loan and, for example, I used to live in Minnesota. So on my credit report, it's going to show that I applied for a loan in Minnesota. But now it'll also show some of my addresses in San Diego. So they only know that because at one point I filled out applications from a previous address, if that makes sense. And in general, you don't really need to worry too much about them having everything here. You know, it doesn't have to have every single one of your addresses, and this area doesn't affect your credit score. But why it is important to look at this is to make sure that everything looks accurate. So for example, if I pulled my credit report and I saw a bunch of addresses I didn't know, that I didn't even recognize, that might be a sign that someone accessed my information and was starting to apply for credit using my information. But as long as you recognize everything and it looks okay, you should be good to go, okay? So that's kind of what the personal information section can look like. The formatting might be a little bit different, but in just it's gonna look like this. Then there can be a little summary section sometimes, and it'll just show like how many accounts, remember they use accounts for all types to gather up all of your loans and credit cards. They'll say how many accounts you've had. So in this example, it's saying that this person has had in total 5 cards, loans, things like that. In general, there's 5. And then over to the right, it says they have a record of there being a balance of $4,430. And they have a record, of 110 monthly payments on this example. So I'll show you more about what the payment history looks like, but this is just a summary. Again, I wouldn't worry about this too much, but this is what someone who is approving you for a car loan, a credit card, something like that, they're gonna look at this information too. So let's move on. So for every single credit card or loan, really any type of credit that you've had, it's gonna look something like this. And I know when you first look at this, at least when I first looked at this, when I first was learning about personal finance, I was like, whoa, what is happening here? So I hope I can walk you through this, and if you have any example or any questions, I can answer them at the end. Okay, you guys? So let's start from the top. So in this example, it says Barclays Bank Delaware. It's always going to start with the company or bank or credit union where you have accessed credits, and then it will have their contact information. So that's a good thing. If there is an error in any of this section about this Barclays card, I would know, if this were my credit report, exactly how to get a hold of them because it has their contact information. So that's who you would want to call if you have questions or anything looks off about this certain area. Then it'll move into the next little section. And the main thing is just to kind of put on your investigator hat and just make sure. Sometimes you have to pretend you're like, what's that guy? Sherlock Holmes. You just kind of have to be curious because sometimes the language that's used in the credit world is a little bit different than how you and I would probably talk about credit. So we can look and see, okay, it's an individual account. That probably means nobody else was an authorized user on this card. Cool. It says loan type, credit card. So we know that the Barclays Bank, it's a credit card, not a car loan, for example, or a student loan. The last time that they received, if we move over, it says date updated. The last time Barclays got information, this is an example, okay? But it says they received it last January. Typically, it'll be within the last few months. So this is an older example that I found online. And then it'll say payment received, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to be too worried about that. Typically in this section, I just want to see that it's a credit card to know what type of loan it is. And then I hop over to where it says pay status. And you really want to see that it says current, paid, or paying as agreed. And I'll show you a chart here in a little bit. But sometimes there's different things that pop up there. But in this example, it says current, paid, or paying as agreed. That is good. That means that the card is still open and that current payments are being made. Even if there's a balance, that's okay. It's just showing that you have been making monthly payments. Does that make sense? I hope so. The next section, it'll have the highest balance that has ever been charged on the card. Typically, when you're first looking at your credit report, that's not that big of a deal, so I wouldn't stress about that too much. And sometimes they'll show your credit limit. These are things that maybe the loan officer will want to look at in more detail, but you just getting started, don't worry about that too much. And then this last section at the bottom, right, that can be overwhelming. It's like, what is happening there? So this is where they show your payment history. So there's going to be a little section like this. Sometimes it's a big section for each type of credit card or loan, any type of credit. If it's been reported to TransUnion or Equifax or Experian, there's going to be up to 2 or sometimes 3 years worth of information about your monthly payment history. I hope you're with me. Okay, so this goes reverse chronological. So you can see it goes backwards in order with the newest payment being made or listed first. So if we look in the first section on the left where it says 1/29, meaning January of 2019. Did I just say that? 1/29? I haven't had caffeine today, you guys. So this is the information that's for January 2019. So it's showing the balance that was there, how much the payment was. And at the bottom, if you want to just kind of cut to the chase, the main thing is to look at the bottom where it says the rating. Or sometimes they'll just have a different label for that section, but there's always going to be a little bit of a code. And so, okay, current just simply means that your payment was made on time for that month. Okay, so if we actually look going back for 12/2018, 11/2018, 10/2018, etc., at the bottom we can see for each one of those months, it says okay. And in the money world, the credit world, I would say this is about as exciting or as sexy as it gets, is it says okay when you have an on-time payment. I wish there was like a star, a thumbs up, a high five, but you're going to get an okay if there was a payment made on time. And I'll show you here in another slide here what else it might say in that area, but for any time where you've had a consistent history of on-time payments, this is exactly what that section will look like. Okay. So just to clarify, before I move on to the next slide, this is what it will look like. Something like this is what it would look like for each type of credit that you've had. So if I had a car loan, it might say Barclays Bank if I got it through them, but instead of where it says loan type, it would say then car loan, okay? And then it would go down and the chart would show the payment history for that, and it would repeat. So for everything that you've accessed as credit, there would be a section like this. So this is really the bulk of what's on your credit report. I'm just checking the chat. Okay, perfect. So moving on, so this is a little bit fuzzy and I apologize, but this was the best, easiest to read chart that I could find. So remember how I said that the payment history is going to show what's been going on with payments? So ideally, you want it to be able to make on-time payments, right? But that's not always possible, and that's okay too. So life happens. So if you make a late payment, the way that they're going to report that or show it on your credit report is it's going to have these other codes. So for example, in the yellow, if you make a payment and it was reported as late, it would up to 30 days, if it was like 1 to 30 days late, in that month's little section, instead of the okay, they'll put 30. If you make a payment that's up to 2 months late, instead of the okay, they would put a 60. So that would be if your payment was 31 to 60 days late. If you made a payment that was up to 3 months late, between 61 days and 90 days late, they would put a little code just for that month that said 90, etc. Does that make sense? There are other things that I'm not going to go in great detail about, but sometimes there's other things that happen when people get behind on their credit. Sometimes if someone were to be like in 2007, 2008, a lot of people were foreclosed on their homes during the financial crisis, for example. So on people's credit report for their home, it might say foreclosed if that happened. And I'm trying to think of other examples. Repossession, so for example, on the top right where it has the R, for example, if someone has a car that's repossessed, if they get really behind on their credit or their loan, and then the bank or credit union takes that car away, it would say R for that area, etc. And sometimes, to be honest, they will close a credit line every so often, or sometimes you just don't use the card and it can get closed. So it might say closed to the bottom right, that black one. And sometimes, remember how I said that they're warehouses. So this is all pertaining still to the credit bureaus. So Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Sometimes just nothing was reported to them for that month. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't automatically ding your credit, but they might just have ND or like an X, meaning that they didn't get anything sent to them for that month specifically, okay? But remember, you kind of have to be like Sherlock Holmes, and they'll have this information, whatever the grid is or the chart that they're using, they'll have that on the credit report for you to reference. So you'll be able to kind of sleuth around and figure out exactly what's happening for each one of the monthly payments if you're curious, okay? So let's move on to credit scores. So we just covered credit reports. Credit scores are based off of the information that's on your credit report, which is why I wanted to start with that first. So I'm curious, I would love to see, have you ever looked at your credit score? So remember, this is a number, not your report, which has the whole rigmarole, okay? Have you ever seen a number for your credit report? That should be popping up for you here soon. So you can go ahead and answer. Answer in the poll. Hopefully that's showing for you. Oh my gosh, so cool. The vast majority of you who answered have in fact seen your credit score, which is amazing. And some of you haven't, and that is totally okay too. So that means hopefully we can provide some guidance for you today. So let's dive into scores. So a credit score is a number that simply represents how likely you are to repay your debts. A credit score is fluid and changes over time. Sometimes people get it stuck in my head, this is my credit score, and that might have been your credit report or credit score at one time, but with every month, it can get updated based on the activity on your credit report. So it simply helps evaluate your credit report and estimate your credit risk. In the money world, they like that word a lot, risk. But it basically shows if you're able to report, if you'll be able to repay your debts more or less. And it kind of is like a quicker way to get a feel on what's happening for your credit, because as you saw, your credit report can have a lot of details and sometimes they just want a quick way to look. So they're related. Your credit score is based off of what's on your credit report, but the credit score is kind of a quicker way to see what's going on. So who makes credit scores? FICO. FICO is the gold standard of who makes credit scores. So FICO is an acronym. F stands for Fair and I stands for Isaac. So it's the Fair Isaac Company. Those are the two last names of the guys who made this company. And there are many other types of credit scores out there. So maybe you've heard the term Vantage Score, or someone in the chat had asked a question about each of the credit bureaus also have their own way of making their own scores. But to be honest with you, I think the statistic is something like 90% of all lenders use the FICO score. So you really, if you can, want to get access to your FICO score. Typically you have to pay to get access to it. But sometimes it's included as like a bonus if you have a credit card that will let you see access, or sometimes your bank or credit union will let you look at it and get your score for free periodically as well, depending on where you bank. So how a credit score is made is there are these factors that are listed here. So I'll start with the biggest one, which is 35% of your FICO score is based off of your payment history. So the biggest factor is, are you making on-time payments? Okay. The next biggest score is how much debt you owe. This is if you've ever heard the term debt to credit ratio. That's this factor here. And so you really want to stick within about 30% or less of your whole credit limit. They like to see that you're not maxing out your credit each month. And so they'll be tracking that. So just those two factors, making on-time payments and not charging over 30% if possible of your credit limit, is the vast majority of your score. If you see, those two make up about 65% of your FICO score before we even go on to the other factors. So I know there's a lot of information up here too, and so don't get overwhelmed. If you just remember your on-time payments are the best thing you can do for yourself, and continuously paying off as much as possible, you'll be in great shape. Briefly, the other factors are new credit. That means like when you pull an inquiry, when you go out and ask someone, please approve me for this credit card, this loan, etc., it will affect your credit. But that's only when you give them permission to do so. If you get spam in the mail and people are pulling your credit report, those are called promotional inquiries, and those don't affect your score. 15% of your score, unfortunately, you can't really affect all that much, but that's your length of credit history. The one thing you can do is to help that is to keep your oldest card open. I think that's good to do as long as there isn't an annual fee. And then at the bottom, you can see 10% there. Ideally, they like to see that people have a mix of different types of credit. So loans, for example, or what's called installment credit, and revolving credit, which is typically credit cards. Okay, but don't worry about it too much. The main thing is, do you want to make on-time payments and continuously try to keep your balances as low as possible, okay? So another poll. What is the range for credit scores? This is another poll. I'd love to see if you know the exact numbers here. Oh my goodness. is. Okay, most of you are on the right track here. So the correct answer is 300 to 850. So I'm definitely going to invite some of you to help co-lead a next session. I'll have to talk with Susie about that. Okay, amazing. So you are right. So here is the range of credit scores. I put the question that I get a lot, what is considered a good score? Here you can see, and I apologize for, I feel like the language used in the money world is kind of intense sometimes, but in terms of how the industry thinks about it, there's a range from excellent, good, fair, and then bad. And so really, again, your credit score is not you. You are not your debt. This is just a whole system that's out there, and we're just trying to help you navigate it, okay? So there's ranges. So in the credit world, the higher the score, the better. It is possible also for people to not yet have a score if you haven't had any experience with credit. You can technically have a 0 score, just like an empty score. But once you have some level of activity on your credit report, then you'll have a score that's generated in time, and it will range between 300 and 850. So you typically want to shoot for something that's around the upper 600s or 700s, but no matter where you're at today is totally okay, and you can keep moving forward each month. So I pulled some information, and you can see that the average credit score across the whole US is 695, and in California, the average credit score is 754 currently. But again, no matter where you're at, it's fluid and it can change. And Adriana from Self-Help Credit Union is going to share practical tips on how you can boost your credit score here in a little bit too. So that's what I'm going to touch on, but then you'll get some more information coming up soon. Some tips to improve your credit is, now that you've seen that chart, you know that 35% of your credit is made from your monthly payments. So you want to make as many on-time payments as possible. Even if you can't pay off the full balance, which is ideal, really try to pay the minimums and try to use about 30% or less of your credit card limit. So that means if my credit card, for example, limit was $1,000, I want to tell myself it's only $300. Okay, because I don't want to go too much over that, or it'll start to affect my credit in a negative way. Try to keep your cards open so that you can build, if you have credit cards, so that you can build that length of credit history, unless they have fees. If there is an annual fee, then you can look around for other options so that you're not paying too much to have a card open. And then make sure that you check your credit report every year. You all saw some of the examples as to why someone's credit could be affected when it's not even their information. The last tip I have is, if you have lots of credit card debt, you can work with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. They offer nonprofits across the whole country that offer a tool that's called debt management plans that are really geared at helping people attack their credit card debt, and they can reduce the interest rates that you're paying, so you can make a lot more progress faster, which is amazing. There's a note here that I put about collections and charge-offs. Sometimes people have collections or charge-offs, and so those will only stay on your credit report for 7 to 10 years. So sometimes people have different types of debt, and they're deciding how much or which ones to pay first. The general rule is you want to pay all unpaid debt, of course, but if you only can afford to pay off one, you want to catch up with the newest late debt as compared to much older debt. So if you have questions about that, I can answer that later. But in the essence of time, some tools to establish credit as a secured credit card, a credit builder loan, and then Adriana will go over more information about what they offer here specifically. And then I'm assuming these links will get sent out to you. So here's some links. This is our information for the Women's Business Center here in San Diego. There's women's business centers across the country, so you can look for those through the Small Business Administration's website, the National Foundation for Credit Counseling if you want to learn about their debt management plans, and then a few other resources. All right, so with that, I want to pass the baton over to my comrade, Adriana Enlow, who's the branch manager at Self-Help Credit Union. I'm very excited to learn about their resources.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Callie. I'd like to thank Free to Thrive for their amazing team for inviting me to be part of this workshop. I also want to do a special shout out to those who are joining us today that participated in the Bite of Reality workshop at the beginning of the year. Congratulations on your progress with the Financial Academy. Next slide, please. Self-help, previous one, there we go. At Self-Help Federal Credit Union, mission is everything to us. And our mission is create and protect ownership and economic opportunity for all, especially people of color, women, rural residents, and low-wealth families and communities. Next slide, please. Here's our $8.5 billion impact from 1980 to 2018. We've lent 82% to low-income borrowers, 61% to people of color, 30% in rural areas, 69% to underserved areas, and 40% to women. Next slide, please. This year, Self-Help celebrated our 40th anniversary. Our organization includes 2 credit unions, one state and one federal, a nonprofit loan fund, and a research policy group. We operate 56 branches nationwide. Next slide, please. In 6 states with over 150,000 members and growing. Next slide, please. In our continued commitment to provide financial education and tools for people to lead financially healthy lives, Self-Help has partnered with GreenPath, our financial wellness partner. GreenPath is a nationwide organization, and their services are free to our members. I want to read this slide to you. I think it's important to set the stage for where we're going. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. This is Gandhi. I want to reflect on the importance of this workshop and how smart financial choices can turn into healthy habits that you can pass down to your children. Callie talked about credit scores and how low credit scores can have a negative impact. She also provided a roadmap for you to better understand how you can take control of your credit and navigate your way to improving your scores. At Self-Help, we offer credit building products that I will share with you. But first, let's talk about the second part of financial wellness. I believe we have a poll here for everyone. Is there a poll? Okay, we'll just keep on going. Oh, there it is. All right, so how do you feel about your finances? Is it fair? Is it good? Is it bad? I think they're coming in. I'm waiting. Okay. All right, so we've got fair, we've got good, and we've got bad. So we've got I think a good place to start with. So if you can, let me get rid of this poll here. Thank you. All right, so here's my question after taking that poll. Can any of you relate to this picture when you start thinking about finances? Like, is it overwhelming? Is it stressful? Is it depressing? You know, you have the power to make a positive change. You do. And next slide, please. How do you begin to make a positive change? What's the first critical step to success? And that is by starting and taking a good look at your spending habits. Next slide, please. All right, so these are the costly C's. Can anyone connect with these expenses Some of you can probably pick out 5 immediately. Others may connect to all of them. Next slide, please. So let's take a good look at the impact of just one of these costly C's. So you do carry out and you spend $7.50 a day, and you do that a week, and then you do that monthly. By the end of the year, just that one is $1,800. So my question is, how many of you would love to have or have banked $1,800 by cutting out just one of these costly C's? If you could go to the next slide, please. All right. Have you ever walked into a grocery store and walked out with something you weren't planning to buy, especially when you're hungry? Have you ever had to throw food away? Have you ever gone out to eat because you have no idea what to make for dinner? Next slide, please. So, how does simplifying your finances sound to you? You can do this by asking, where do I spend my money and what can I give up? Next slide, please. So I want to pause here. And it is I am, two of the most powerful words. And what you put in after them shapes your reality. So I am confident you will be successful. And I'd like to show you how. Next slide, please. You do this by reducing your spending. Next slide, please. All right. So a budget, creating a budget. A solid budget is key to financial success. Why? Because you have an agreement with yourself in writing to use as a guide and measure your progress. Your budget will also help you to know in advance if you're getting behind. And how powerful is that? Say you run into unexpected expenses. You can get on the phone to the electric company, for example, and let them know right away that your budget's gone off track this month and that you're working, you're asking for the help to work through the expenses. And when you begin to tell them exactly how much you have to pay based on your budget, when you're having this conversation with them and you share with them where you're at for the next 30 to 45 days, the person on the other phone is really going to start listening and to understand, because they realize that you are an individual that's managing your expenses and you've just had an unplanned expense. And what then happens is that you get a lot more cooperation, and then you can also share with them what you're going to be able to do to make it work for that month. This is also true when it comes to business. If you're an entrepreneur and considering starting your own business, then you're most definitely going to want to know how to manage your budget. Free to Thrive, their team has put together a wonderful budget that they're going to share with you. It doesn't have to be complicated. Modify it as you see fit. Just do it. Just use it, because it is going to be the key to your success. Next slide, please. Let's look at several new behaviors and action items that you can do right away to launch and continue your path to financial success. Next slide, please. All right. So one of the things you can do is, okay, what's on sale? Plan the meal, make a list, use coupons, like 15 minutes and you're set. And in today's climate, this is a powerful way to make a positive impact on your expenses. And like I said, it's only going to take 15 minutes, but it can really make a difference for you. Next slide. Cancel subscriptions. Okay, so how many of us have subscriptions or services that we're really not using? These are hidden expenses and often overlooked until the next month. Then you forget about them, and then it's the next month, and it just goes on and on and on. So a good tool is to go in and just take a look at what you have subscriptions to and evaluate it and decide if you really need it or can you just let it go. Next slide. Short-term goals, those are really important. You can do them by a month, you can do them longer if you need to, but let's just say that you set this goal to put $1 aside a day. If you were consistent and you did that every day, by this time next year, you will have saved $365. And that's a lot of money. Next slide, please. Start saving for a rainy day. You can put $1 in, for yourself or family and unexpected expenses and call it your rainy day fund. Or you can even put just coins in a jar and get everyone involved in it and get the family engaged so that they begin to see your changes in terms of how you're starting to save. Next slide, please. Financial wellness begins with you. And what you've learned today can change your life and that of your children. You know this, but that's why you're here, is because you're really wanting to build on your knowledge and go out and make a difference in your life. Next slide. Celebrate your success, whether they're big or small. You may have setbacks, and that's okay. That's just life. You're in it for the long haul. You're putting time in now to learn how to be financially healthy. You're working on a lifetime of success. You've got this. You can do this. Next slide. These are some of the products that we have at Self-Help. And if you'd like more information on our products and services, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help you. We're excited about the workshop and the progress that people are making through it. And so anything that we can do to help you, we are here to support you. Thank you so much.
Wow, what a great presentation, Adriana and Callie. So much great information as well. Thank you both. We've got a few questions and we're right at the top of the hour, so we definitely have some time. And of course, stay tuned because I'll be doing the drawing and giving you the last bit of information. But thank you, Callie and Adriana, just so much great, valuable information. Here we are at the Q&A. So the first question, and I'll just go ahead and direct them toward whoever best to respond. The first question is, if you change your name or social security number out of safety, will this restart your credit score? Callie, I guess that would be for you.
Hi there. Yeah. Oh, can you see me again? Okay. Thanks for that question. Yes. So the Social Security number, the Social Security Administration is who issues Social Security numbers. So they're able to link your old number to your new one, not only so that your Social Security benefit when you retire will be based off of all of your wages, but as long as you let your lenders know that you've changed your number. So lenders meaning your credit card companies, banks, anywhere that you are using credit, they should be able to link your credit history so that your past behavior and credit payments are not lost. You definitely want those to be connected so that it's easy for you to manage your credit, and they should be able to do that.
Thanks, Callie. Here's actually another one for you. Great, these are great questions. In this example, the person paid their account in full each month. Does it matter if they only paid the minimum 27 payment or obviously making the full payment?
Sure. So let me go back to that slide quick and I'll share my screen again. All right, so that question was specifically about this example. So if we go back here, down in the bottom part, we can walk through this. So see where in the chart it says balance, that's how much was left unpaid. Scheduled payment is going to be, that's another way to say minimum balance typically. So a scheduled payment is simply how much the credit card company or bank or credit union is expecting you to pay at a minimum that month. Whenever possible, it's great if you can pay more than that, because you'll be done with your balance quicker, and then also you will pay less interest in general. But in this example, you would want to pay, if we look at the scheduled payment, that's at a minimum which you would want to pay for that month, if that makes sense. But the more that you pay, the better. I hope that answers that person's question.
Callie, another one for you. What if I have no credit? Should I get a credit card now? I'm 19, or is that too risky?
I would love Adriana's opinion on this too, but I believe it's not too early. You could get started with a secured credit card, which Adriana can explain a little bit too. But a secured credit card or just a regular credit card would be a good start for you to get started, because then you're able to build a longer length of credit history. And sometimes people really freak out. I'll say in my experience, I've worked with people on their credit since 2009. And sometimes people are like anxious about credit cards, but I just want to remind you, credit cards aren't the issue. It's if you have an unpaid balance. That's when it turns into debt, is after the end of the month. And so if you're able to get a small credit card and even just charge one bill, let's say you could put your SDG&E on there and then just set it on auto pay. Or you could just once a month go get something that you were already planning to buy. Let's say you could go to the grocery store once a month and then go home and right away pay that bad boy off. Then you don't have any debt, but you're building that experience with your credit so that you can show over a period of time that you have experience with credit. And then you're able to have that demonstrated. Because if you want to apply for, let's say down the line, you might want to apply for a bigger type of loan, like a car loan or a mortgage, for example. Those are common things that people want at some point. It's really important to have shown past history with credit. And so starting at 19 is great. I would just say make sure to remember that you don't want to max it out. Even if you're able to pay off the full balance at the end of the month, you don't want to do that. You really just want to charge just a little bit. 30% or under of the balance would be ideal. If Adriana has anything else to chime in about that, that would be amazing. But I would say from my take, it's not too early, as long as you know how credit works.
Yeah, I echo what Callie shared out with the group. We want you to establish credit. The sooner the better, because then you begin to develop good habits and you start to work on establishing that FICO score that Callie was talking about. And so in as much as you're able to do that, definitely move forward on that. It's, you know, all credit is really about managing how you make your payments. And if you can do that at an early age and you learn that skill, it's going to be wonderful for you, because when you get ready to buy your first car, you're going to have good scores and you're going to show that you have the ability to make payments on time. And that's really what credit scores are all about, is you being able to show your ability to pay on time and at the very minimum, the minimum payment. And as Callie was saying, typically you want to pay more than that. And you want to be mindful of the usage of the credit card, right? Not maxing it out, because that would have a negative impact on your score. So, you know, learning to balance that at 19, I think is wonderful, and you should definitely do that.
Thanks, you guys. Great questions and great answers. We have another question. If you see an error in your reports, what are the protocols or method for appealing, clarifying your record? And what is the average turnaround time for that?
I can take that one. So the first thing that I would recommend is you always want to contact the lender. So as I showed on that example earlier, it has the contact information for each credit card company or whoever you have the debt with. So you want to contact them directly and ask what your current balance is, check in, whatever the error is. If you think the balance is off, you could ask for a copy of their payments. And then if you have proof, for example, that you made payments that weren't posted, you could send that in. But you want to contact the creditor directly, individually. And my understanding is that legally they have to get back to you within 30 days. It might not be resolved in 30 days, but they have to acknowledge your request in some form within 30 days. So just to recap, you want to contact the lender directly to work with them and ask for proof of why they're posting that information on your credit report in that way, if anything looks off. And then from there, you can move forward with asking for it to be updated if there is indeed an error.
Thanks, Callie. Another credit question. If something happened to your credit score as a victim and you contacted the company at the time seeking help, a way out, and nothing was done, is there anything you can do now to help your credit history? I don't know, Callie, is that sometimes where you can write a letter, or is that an option to a creditor about a situation?
Yeah, so I would be curious to know, it would depend on the situation. Credit is really personalized depending on someone's situation because everybody's credit report looks unique to them. But you would want to, I would encourage you to reach out again if you feel comfortable doing that. But if indeed they're not willing to do anything, you can also contact the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I have that link in my resources that should get sent to you. That's a federal agency that's geared at helping individuals with any challenges that they have in the money world. And even beyond that, then, if you're wanting to just add information, because how to say this, credit is kind of a mix of clearing up or improving your credit depends on kind of two things: clearing up past issues that you have going on, past debts, catching up on old bills and things like that if you're behind. And then once you reach that, you also want to put good, positive, on-time payments into the system too, so that you can show that you're able to handle credit going forward. So the tools that Adriana mentioned that Self-Help offers, the secured credit card, for example, that's an amazing tool. The different types of credit building loans that they offer, a stellar tool. So catching up on old debt would be awesome, but then also putting new information into the system. Both of those together would be your best shot at boosting your credit score.
Wonderful. I know we're getting close to our time here, but we've just got 3 more questions. In a credit report, if you apply for a new credit card in a new state and there are people that have that particular info, is there a way that they can find the new address? Like if you are, I'm assuming what she means by if you're in a new state and you applied, would someone be able to get your address? I believe that information is quite private, right, Callie?
Yeah, so anytime that someone needs to access your credit report for any of the reasons that we discussed earlier, applying for an apartment, for example, applying for a loan, etc., they have to ask your permission. Even the select job applications that require that, they have to ask your permission. You have to sign giving them that. So your credit report information isn't just public information. It's definitely, there's so many security measures that go into keeping that information private through all the credit bureaus. But an extra measure that you could do that I didn't include, but that is like bonus information, is you can do something that's called a credit freeze, which means that you put like an extra lock on your credit reports. If you go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's website, which is just, I believe, consumerfinance.gov, they will show you how to freeze your credit report, and that is like an extra measure so that it makes it even more protected. So right now it's already protected. They shouldn't be able to see your new address, but that is an extra thing that you could do if you want.
Thanks, Callie. How do I establish credit through a secured credit card? This is probably Adriana, when I cannot get anyone to approve me due to my poor credit score.
Hi, I would suggest that you give me a call and have you come in, and we can begin the process by getting you information on how our secured credit card works. and go through the details of that with you. We would love to be able to help you out. The process is pretty straightforward. We just, part of our process here, because we are a financial institution, is making sure that we can open a savings account for you. And we do have our second chance checking and savings accounts. So depending on, previous activity at other financial institutions, that would be an area that we would take a look at. But aside from that, we would have you come in and we would explain to you how our secured credit card would work.
Thank you, Adriana. And obviously, if you aren't from the San Diego area, as Adriana said, there are other self-helps. I know they have a website. We will be sharing all that information with you guys in an email after the workshop. Just a couple more. Aren't these companies mandated reporters? I'm assuming maybe you're talking about the credit bureaus. Callie?
So thanks for that question. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that question to the person who asked that, because my understanding that term mandated reporter, I'm sorry for the noise outside my apartment. Someone is taking care of their lawn. Mandated reporters is typically regarding when there's like situations of violence or protecting vulnerable adults or vulnerable children. So I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. I'd be happy to look into that more I can have them pass along my information, but I don't know exactly what you mean. I'm sorry. I don't know if Adriana is able to chime in with that.
She's added on here mandated financial reporters like banks. I don't believe so.
I just don't know what that term means. Adriana is free to chime in. I'm not familiar with that term. When I hear mandated reporters, I think of something else outside the money world.
We'll definitely be able to get back to you on that and try to get in more detail on that question. So no worries about that. So now I know we're approaching time. I think actually these might be questions a little bit for both of you, but 3 years ago, I applied for a secured credit card. I now have an unsecured card with a different company and a current car loan. I've asked the old credit card company to return my security deposit on the secured credit card, but they say it's up to them on when they return the deposit, or I can close the account. Should I close the account or keep the card open because it has the longest credit history? Great question. Adriana, it's kind of a combo, but maybe Adriana, in regards to the close, the secured credit card.
Hi. If you have a secured credit card and you don't need that money right away, I would encourage you to leave it open, because anytime that you close an account, it is going to have a negative impact on your credit report. And, really what you're wanting to show is that history. And so if you've got a long history of making payments and it's positive, there's really no reason for you to close it out, other than if you needed the money that you're using for your secured account, in which case you would have to close out that secured credit card. But if you can avoid that and keep it open, then I would suggest that you do that.
Thank you, Adriana. I think there's a couple, I think the last couple are just really related, again, to secured credit. So I would highly recommend that you reach out to Adriana either via email or give her a call, and I'm sure she can point you in the right direction. So hopefully we've answered a lot of your questions. Great questions. So glad you guys are engaged in the conversation today. And I'm really excited about hopefully what you can put into practice after today. So with that, I think that's all of the questions for now. So going back, just to close this out, it's time to select the winners for our opportunity drawing. As I said, we're just selecting them from random numbers that you receive on our back end when you log on today. And this is only for the people that are watching the workshop live. So Elaine, our amazing training coordinator, I am selecting 3, 9, 17, and 21. So today, stay tuned to your inbox to see if one of those numbers is you. And then of course, we'll be reaching out to find out how we can get the items to you. Just a last couple of things in closing today. If you would like a completion certificate, and this even goes for any of you that perhaps were with us for the Bite of Reality workshop in February, you can reach out to me. My email is here on the screen, and we will provide you with a completion certificate for this workshop. So just let us know, and we'll email that to you as soon as possible. For more information, if you have questions about any of other programs at Free to Thrive, future financial empowerment workshops, just anything in general about Free to Thrive, or of course anything about the presenters or anything today, you can reach out to me. All of my information is there, and or you can reach out to Dion, our client liaison at Free to Thrive. Her email and phone number is there as well. So happy to answer any questions. Last but not least, we just want to thank you all for participating in our first online workshop. We were so excited to have such a great response. And of course, huge shout out to Adriana and Callie for giving us so much valuable information. I know both of them. Do not hesitate to reach out to them for any questions. We're grateful to Self-Help Credit Union and the San Diego Women's Business Center for being a partner with this program. Our next workshop, we do not have the date confirmed yet, but you will all be receiving an email after this workshop with this recording, so you can review again if you want to go back and hear more about what was spoken about today. But we will also update you on the next date, but it will be an even deeper dive into personal budgeting. So personal budgeting kind of part 2, and we hope to have that in August. So just stay tuned. You can also check out that information on our website. But we are so grateful that you joined us today, and I just wish you all a great rest of the week. Oh, last thing, in the email, you will get that budgeting template that Adriana actually mentioned. So it's a template that you can download and you can fill it in, or you can just print it and write in your personal budget. But if you do get that and want to join our next workshop, that'll just be kind of a great tool for you to really put into practice some of the things you learned today. And going forward with our workshops, you can use that as well. So look for that email. And of course, for the winners, congratulations, and we'll get back to you later today. But thank you again, everyone. And I hope you have a fantastic day.